Our guest speaker today is a man who needs no introduction to the band. A previous member of the marching and jazz bands, Ken Ricci continues to show his support for the Band of the Fighting Irish. With the current construction of Ricci Family Fields, Jake and I were very excited when Mr. Ricci agreed to speak today. Without further ado, please welcome Mr. Ricci to the podium.
I'm told that there was a pretty big turnout for this event, different from prior years, and I think I know what happened. The last time I spoke to the band, it was at a class called The Business of Music. And I wrote a book called Management by Trust. And one of the things I do when I lecture on the book is I use an exercise where I give out $100 bills. And I think you thought you were coming to that lecture. But I guess you know how highly I think of the band and the commitment to what you do. When I was invited to come out, I want you to know that I live in Phoenix. It's February. I'm in South Bend. If that doesn't show that I'm so proud of what you do and the sacrifices you make to make this band so successful, I don't know else would say it. A round of applause to you for all you've done to our life. Give yourself a round of applause. By the way, your time in the band does not go unrewarded. Do you know that Fortune 500 CEOs are 8 times more likely to have been in the band than to play football? So think about that one, football banquet. My mom is here with me, and I'm so glad that she could make this. My mom was here when we dedicated the band building. And when we did that, it was a wonderful event, and Ken Dye was showing us around the building, and my mom said to Dr. Dye, she says, "What's that field next to the building for?" He says, "Well, that's for the addition to the Ricci Band building." So I'm fully expecting what's coming next. I came to Notre Dame in 1974. I did play the trumpet. Watch this. And the saxophone. And the drums. When I was here, the marching band was 180 strong. We still marched from the Gold Dome to the stadium. We didn't have trumpets under the dome, which I wish we did, because I think that's one of the most spectacular things as a trumpet player I get to see. We didn't get to learn to dance. We didn't have any dance routines. And the Irish Guard weren't allowed to wear underwear. Some traditions survive and some don't. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. And this is the first time in 40 years I've ever let this out. So my first year in the band, our away game was Pittsburgh. And you know how that goes. We had to get up, catch the bus in the morning. And so you set your alarm for 5 o'clock so I could get on the bus. But my roommate was frequently at the library. Not the Hesburgh Library, it was the library on Notre Dame Avenue, which was actually a bar. So he comes in 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning from studying, and he decides to reset the alarm clock. No cell phones, had to reset the alarm clock. So when it went off so he could be prompt for his class that began at 11:30, I was up, band was gone. So now I had to figure out what to do. So I immediately went out to the South Bend Airport. How do you get to Pittsburgh with not a lot of money? I ended up on a North Central Airlines, it was called. I went from South Bend to Battle Creek to Kalamazoo to Detroit to Pittsburgh. Now, I still managed to get there before the band did. But now how do I pull this off? I mean, I don't have a key to the room. I don't even have my instrument. It's on the bus because they loaded that the night before. But I have to be cool, like nothing went wrong. So what I do is I sit in the lobby, and when I see the buses pull off, I immediately set my bag down and went to the bathroom. And then as I saw enough people inside, I walked out of the bathroom, and I said, how's everybody? And people looked at me like, which bus were you on? And I kept saying I was on the other bus. So now you know there wasn't another bus. Well, when I got here, my parents, we had the traditional drop-off. It's a little bit different than when you were dropped off as a freshman. When I was dropped off, it was much more disorganized, so you really had to get there early. You wanted to try to you don't want to end up with the lower bunk. But still, the process was the same. You had a dinner, you had with your parents, you had mass, and then you had the tearful goodbye. And that's how it worked for drop-offs at Notre Dame for many years, but that wasn't exactly how my parents did it. See, we're Italian, and so we normally have a nice meal on Sundays. So my parents thought they might as well stay and have one meal with me before they left. Well, it was at that meal that I learned they were going to stay one more day, just to make sure my Monday classes went off okay. Well, we met for lunch on Monday, and they said, well, the Monday ones went good. Let's check on Tuesdays. So they stayed one more night. Good thing there was a home football game that weekend, or they could have been here all semester. So finally, on Wednesday, when they're leaving, they come to my dorm room in Morrissey to say goodbye. And my mom has a little tear in her eye, and she says her goodbye. And then my dad, she starts to walk out. And then my dad comes up to me, and he says, here's what I want you to do. He said, enjoy your time in college. Try some things you wouldn't normally try. But what I want you to do is when you leave here at Notre Dame, I want you to find what you're passionate about. I want you to find your passion. And he gave me a big hug, and he started to walk down the hall. He grabbed my mom's arm, and they got about 10 feet down. And my mom did a 180. She came back up the hall. She came up to me, and she said, and don't get any diseases. A spoiler alert, I did not get any diseases. And I did take my dad's advice. I tried a class in ceramics, I did astronomy, I took a class in Jungian philosophy where I learned I was not the center of the universe, and I took a class in Buddhism where I learned I was the center of the universe. And in the end, I found my passion, and my passion was in aviation, and it was in flying. And as graduation approached, I was very proud to tell my dad that I was excited about being in aviation. Well, I've only seen my dad cry twice in his life. Once when his mother died, and the second time when his son with a 4-year degree from the University of Notre Dame, bachelor's in business administration, major in accounting with 3 job offers, told him he was giving up accounting to become a pilot. I think what my dad meant to say when I was dropped off as a freshman is to do something that he was passionate about, not necessarily what I was passionate about. Years later, my dad used to tell a story to me that I think reconciled the whole thing. He said he used to tell the story of a father who had his son graduate from college, and the father brought him into their family business. And he said, son, I want you to know, one of the dreams of mine has always been to be in business with you. I've always had this idea and this dream that you and I would be together in business. So today, I am here to present you with 50% ownership in the company free of charge. It's just you and I, partners in our business from here on. And they had a little hug, and they separated. And then the father sat the son down. He says, okay, now that we're partners and we have to think about what we want to do, He says, where do you think you'd like to start working in the business? I was thinking you'll start in sales. You could go meet our customers, understand what they want out of our products. And the son says, you know, Dad, sales isn't for me. You're on the road a lot. You don't get to be home with your family. And the father says, that's no problem. He says, what we'll do is we'll put you in manufacturing. You work on the floor. You get to meet our employees. You see what motivates them. He goes, Dad, I don't know, being on the floor, that's kind of a pretty dirty job. I don't think that's for me either. And then he says, well, how about we put you in finance? You'll learn a deal with our bankers. You'll see how we make money. He goes, Dad, finance? Who wants to do finance? You're in that little cubicle. You don't get anything to do. So there's a pause, and the son says, you know what, Dad? Why don't you just buy me out? And so it wasn't the son's passion. And my father said you have to find your passion. Well, if you think about it, music is all about passion. Whether it's the passion it takes to learn your instruments, to do the practicing, although I will tell you that when I was practicing, I was required to practice 1 hour a day. But we had one of those little cooking timers that had the little knob. You could go to 60 minutes. And between songs, I knew I could always get a minute or two, so I could turn a 60-minute practice into 48 minutes. But there's passion in learning to be a musician. There's passion that you hear, passion that you have when you hear music. And it touches our lives in so many ways. Music is the soundtrack of our life. And much of my love for music and the place in my heart that belongs to all things band come from my father. The band building is actually named after him from a truly grateful son who remembered how he lived and what was important to him. He played guitar and he played trumpet. Thank you. He played in the Navy band during World War II, and it was kind of a pickup band. He got to San Francisco to be deployed out to the Pacific and started playing. They had a layover there and started finding other band members, and before you know it, he spent the war. And he was creating in his mind a soundtrack for many of those that would go to battle in the Pacific. And he felt very proud. He was never disappointed that he didn't go into battle. In fact, he would say music kept me out of harm's way. But what he did for people about to go into battle was very important to him. And I think you understand the correlation between what you do for people. My dad, when I was growing up, had a job that kept him away from home a lot. And when he did come home, the one thing he always liked to do was go see one of his favorite bands. And they were Stan Kenton and Maynard Ferguson, who I understand played here at Notre Dame last year. And much of what I remember, the memories that I have of my dad are so vivid because they're based around the music that was being played. My dad's favorite song, I've Got You Under My Skin, whether it was sung, played by a big band or by Franks. When I hear that song today, I know exactly the memory it instills. I know exactly why it's the soundtrack of my life. My wife walked down the aisle to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and so that's become a soundtrack of our life. And when we're in a piano bar, we make sure it gets played. And we're often in piano bars, so we get to hear it a lot. And who doesn't hear the Notre Dame fight song and have something about Notre Dame, whether it's going off to a football game or a basketball game or some event? I mean, it's iconic how that song touches our life, and you do that. You bring that into our life. For me, every time I hear the fight song, I remember May 17th, 2011, because that was the day that I conducted the Notre Dame concert band at Severance Hall. And in my mind, the best rendition of the Notre Dame fight song ever. It's actually, a summary of that is actually posted on YouTube. And think about how it touches someone. Someone wrote in the comments below the summary of the band playing at Severance Hall, "Dear Ken Ricci, thanks so much for the band building. It's beautiful, and it's great to see you in this video. 00 Flag Slayer 00. So, if Mr. and Ms. Flag Slayer are in the room, thanks. This summer I celebrated a birthday milestone. And my wife made one of those videos where all your friends say wonderful things about you. And she thought to include Dr. Dye because he's been very important in our lives. And he gave a very eloquent summary of our relationship with the band. But then he did something really special. He had the band play Happy Birthday. And that was followed by the alma mater. And I think you have no idea how genuine the meaning of something that is, how much passion it stirs in me to listen to something like that. And I know many of you in this room were involved in that, and so thank all of you so much for making that happen. It was so touching, and I'm so appreciative. That video ends, the band plays Happy Birthday, then comes the alma mater. And I have to tell you that ending that alma mater still stirs passion in me, just like, and we end so many things here with the alma mater. We end football games, all kinds of events, right? But still to this day, I can no longer sing the alma mater. And it's not because I can't remember the words, but I'm always choked up by remembering the kindness and thoughtfulness of this band, of the Notre Dame band. Because on a chilly day in 1992, my father was buried, and we had a ceremony in the crypt. And when we came out of the crypt to go to our cars, there was a knoll across the way. And on that knoll was a soul trumpeter playing the alma mater, Notre Dame, our mother. Who does these things? You guys do, the band. In 2012, Notre Dame played Oklahoma, and Coach Kelly asked me if there was any way to get the band there for the game. See, coaches know that they have to still instill passion in their players. And he knew that music is a way to instill passion. So my wife and I underwrote the trip. We were rewarded with a victory. Now, maybe we should send the band on more road trips this year. But we also received a video and an album, an autographed album by the band members that went there. And there were pictures on one side, and on the opposing side, the band members were asked to say what touched them on the trip, what were the important things they did. And universally, they talk about the service work that they did on that trip. About they went to high schools, they went to a children's center where they worked with what they performed for handicapped children. It was a 16-hour ride to Oklahoma, and yet the band decides that the minute they get there, first thing they're going to do is find a way to be of service to others. I so enjoy getting the band newsletter. I enjoy that it's often filled with stories about the band's service programs. I noticed in the latest edition that we found we have too many people volunteering for the service work that we do. And I want to say, who does these things? Who thinks of life in such thoughtful terms that they send a trumpeter to a gravesite or take a 16-hour bus ride and end up there to spend time with handicapped children? Who recognizes this obligation of service to others? It's you. It's you. It's the band of the Fighting Irish. And I don't know, I think you need to understand how admirable we all are of what you do. I know you have a phrase, leave a legacy. I want you to know that the compassion that you show is a legacy. It is a legendary legacy, and you know we love legends at Notre Dame, and we have a legend. We have a band legend in what you do. Your passion creates the music, the soundtrack of our lives. It creates memories, and it instills passion. It follows my dad's words on the day that he dropped us off to do something you're passionate about and to live life passionately. But more than that, you've married this passion with compassion. You've learned this through your family. You've learned this through your band family. You've obviously learned it through your time at Notre Dame. And so when you drop your children off at Notre Dame, you're more than welcome to remind them not to get any diseases. But also remind them to be passionate about what they do and compassionate about how they do it. Thank you for having me today. Thank you for the joy you've brought to my life. Thank you, Teresa, Danny, Rose, Alex, Bryn, and thank you, Dr. Dye's staff. And thank you, our mother, Notre Dame.
We'd like to ask Mr. Ricci to please come back up. We have a gift. It's a framed photo of us in our leprechaun formation, and it was signed by mostly everyone, I think everyone in the whole band that got a chance to sign it. Can we get a round of applause?